Good morning. I've got my fake coffee all prepared. Hope you have your early morning drink of preference all hot and ready for this morning's discussion, exploration of current events and religion and politics. So, thanks for stopping your scroll long enough to at least hear me say that. Hope you don't start scrolling instantly. Uh, got some uh, beginnings of seeds of ideas that I want to talk about over the next hour that pretty sure you'll find uh, helpful, provocative, interesting. So remember that everything gets archived and notes are added to each day's live stream only at michaelheath.tv. You may be watching this on YouTube or X because this streams simultaneously to my channels on those two big tech platforms, but I don't spend a lot of time doing any kind of editing or maintenance on those platforms. So if you want to get the most detail related to each day's live stream, you have to go to michaelheath.tv. And also, while I'm doing a little housekeeping, let me mention that I do a daily email called the issue summary, which hits 3 current issues related to religion, politics, and or current events. You can subscribe for free. Everything I do, everything I produce for content online is free uh, at michaelheath.org. Michaelheath.org is where you can access my blog posts going back decades, I think, but at least back to back maybe 10 years or so. There's a lot of content there for you to peruse to get a better idea about uh, my own individual context in politics and uh, religion. So, what I decided to look at this morning is a video that I haven't watched but was sent to me by a viewer and or a reader of my daily issue summary, and it concerns a rising in popularity young man, leader, commentator, uh, who hasn't even broke out of his 20s yet. He's moving toward his late 20s, and I first discovered him when he was in his late teens, so quite a while ago, and exposed myself to quite a bit of his content and developed a genuine affection for him and for his narrative, especially his courage. His name is Nick Fuentes. Nick Fuentes, everybody now, I think, is pretty much aware of him. He's become more of a lightning rod today than he has ever been in his career, which started in his mid to late teens online while he was gaming and live streaming at the same time and creating for himself friend and foe based on his own religious and political opinions that he would share while gaming. And so he kept doing that, kept doing it, and is still doing it today. I haven't watched his recent live streams because I'm not really seeing through my sources that he's saying anything really new. So I have been paying attention to other sources rather than Nick, but I still share. Uh, I have a lot of agreement with him on a number of issues. I agree with him more than I disagree with him. That is for sure. So to set this up, I want to turn to the Bible, specifically an Old Testament passage from the book of Judges, chapter 4, and verses 17 through 22. Sisera, the Canaanite commander, fled on foot to the tent of Jael, the wife of Heber the Kenite. Jael went out to meet him. She gave him milk, covered him up. Sisera lay asleep exhausted. Then Jael, Heber's wife, took a tent peg and a hammer in her hands, went softly to him, and drove the peg into his temple until it went down into the ground. So he died. I remember many years ago in one of my first readings through the Bible, Old and New Testament, coming across this verse and thinking, wow, this is really graphic and bloody and violent and bold. And why is this in the Bible? Why is this part of Christianity? Wow, And so I made a mental note about this passage, and it occurred to me this morning, and it has occurred to me many times in my political and religious career as a layman, because of its violence, its boldness, its directness, its offensive quality. Not just that it's offensive, but that it puts the good guys, Israel in this case, on the offense in war. And of course, you find that as a commonplace in the Old Testament of the Bible. The reality of war between the Hebrews and their neighbors, and the give and take between these two forces. And so I'm not bringing up this verse to suggest that Netanyahu is right to cite Amalek and Moses as justification for genocide. What I am bringing this up for is to point out the obvious fact about the Bible as a narrative and as stories, especially in the Old Covenant, about Israel's experiences in the Middle East. But because I think, I in a way, in a sense, I guess, I was going to say I'd rather be alive today than back then. It just seems like it was so much more in your face violent back in the Old Testament times. But really, was it? I think we American evangelical Protestants especially are conditioned to think that way, because we've here in America not been visited by the horrors of hundreds of millions of innocent people being slaughtered in a relatively short period of time in our own homeland and our own geography. But this is not the experience of many people all over the world, even in Europe, which is, of course, where we all started here in the United States of America. The bloodiest time for Europe in all of human history was not 500 BC or 1000 BC or even 500 AD. It was the 20th century. That was the bloodiest period in human history, not that long ago, with the two world wars. And with the reign of communism, which is a markedly bloody and violent ideology, capitalism isn't much better. We've produced all sorts of suffering in the name of in the name of consolidating and benefiting capital within our corporate structure here in the United States of America. We've done that on steroids since World War II. So this idea that bloodletting and violence is contained in ancient history, and it was somehow much worse than things are today, it's probably not a good idea. It's probably not an accurate idea. The reason I bring this up this morning to set up what I want to discuss with you this morning is that we are quick to judge the tone and style, the political tone and style, we, right of center forces, political and religious forces, traditionalists, conservatives, so to speak, we are quick to judge the tone and style, the language, the narrative of people on our side if they don't measure up to our sort of new covenant, New Testament, nicer than Jesus ideas about force and violence and all of that. So sorry for leaving myself small all that time. Appreciate your patience while I continue to learn to do this, all the work here of production, as well as being the host of the show. So let me also say here that you can comment, and I'll see your comment. I may choose to show it on the screen, I may not. If you're watching me on X or on YouTube, you can offer a comment. So we just looked at this passage from Judges where Jael hammers a tent peg through the skull of the leader of the opposition's army, the commander of the opposition's army. And then the takeaway is that conflict, the use of force, violence in is a real thing. It's all through the Bible, especially the Old Covenant. And look at the experience of Jesus. He was crucified, right? He was tortured. Talk about bloody. We Christians are called to take up our cross every day and follow him. Well, the cross is an instrument of torture. It's a bloody, bloody instrument of Roman torture, crucifixion. So we don't think deeply enough or broadly enough about violence and force when we bring our Christian convictions into politics and religion. We need to grow up in Maine and in America. And young men like Nick Fuentes are helping us to do that. So this video is him. If you have never seen him then before, maybe the first time you saw him was on Tucker. Recently, so this is him. And I think this is a recent live stream of his. He live streams frequently and has done for over a decade since he was in his mid-teens. As I said at the beginning of the show, when he started live streaming while he was playing video games in his parents' basement, he started to share his personal, political, and religious views in his live streams and made himself a lot of enemies and a lot of friends and grew an audience that eventually gained the name Groypers, which goes back to their decision 5, 6, 7 years ago, these young men who had come to trust and follow and be loyal to Nick, their decision to participate in, I think it was called No Fap November, which was uh, a movement among young men to stop watching porn and to stop doing what boys do when they watch porn. No Fap November, I think it was called. And Nick became sort of the leader identified with that decision to do that, and very publicly. And that's when he captured my attention, because here was a man just in his just barely cresting 20 at that time, or maybe in his late teens, not sure, who was boldly and publicly confronting the porn culture online. And that alone deserves respect, even today. And he's still doing it, by the way. He's still confronting that culture, calling it out for what it is and for the dangers inherent in it, especially for young boy or young men, and for young women. So good for Nick. So this is Nick recently, and we're gonna start watching through this, and I'm gonna be commenting on him and his ideas in relationship to the thinking that he's helped me to do since I first started listening to him, probably 6, 7 years ago, maybe even a little more. I am really so thankful that Nick was interviewed by Tucker, and that the controversy surrounding him has become so intense. This is a kind of what we've started talking about in the Bible, where the conflict becomes very real. It's almost like you can touch it. The conflict becomes bloody almost, in a political sense. Of course, in the passage we read from Judges, it went beyond politics. We're talking war, and we're talking a tent stake being driven through someone's skull. Heaven forbid that the empire, the United States of America, continues on to that point where we have that kind of kinetic, organized warfare within the borders of the United States. The last time that we encountered that kind of organized violence in the United States was, there I go again, talking, giving a little rant, and not, I'm keeping myself tiny in the corner. So that kind of, we need to work politically with our narrative, with our words, with our tone, with our style, to head off that kind of organized bloodletting in North America. That's why I do this. That's why I get on every morning at 6 a.m. That's why I send out my email every day. And my narrative is political. It's aimed at politics. I don't want war in America. I don't want war. I voted for Trump because I want the forever wars to end. There should be no such thing. There can be no such thing going forward as forever wars. There's war and peace, and we work as human beings the world over to reduce war to infrequency, to something that happens infrequently, and only when politics fails, only when negotiations fail, only when trade doesn't work, only when cultural sharing and understanding stops working, only when there's a threat to maybe our existence, where we enter into what St. Augustine described as a just war, a just war. So forever wars must never become a thing again. We have, as humanity, we've got so many huge problems that we have to face as 7, 8, 9 billion people on Earth. We have problems with our environment as a result of pollution that's driven by capitalism for the most part. I saw it up close and personal. I probably shouldn't. Well, just real quick, I was in I was in Kenya, below Kenya, Tanzania, more than once, and they were doing a great job with glass bottles, returning them and everything. And it was, but then for the capitalists from away decided to get rid of this glass bottle system, which was working brilliantly for the distribution of drinks and sodas especially, and they eliminated it and they replaced it with plastic. And they said they were going to recycle, but they didn't recycle. And now I'm told that Tanzania is littered with throwaway plastic bottles. This kind of stuff we need to tackle. We need to stop being at war with everybody, and we need to come together, and we need to stop destroying the planet. We need to be good stewards over our neighborhoods and over the earth. We need to be good stewards with it. We don't need to believe Bill Gates when he says that if we just cloud the skies and stop the sun, or whatever his latest nut job idea is, his latest insane technologically driven idea is about blocking out the sun and all this. No. And it's like big pharma. A pill is going to fix you. Some kind of a vaccine, a shot or a pill is always going to be the fix. No, what's the fix is bringing back small farms and good food, local farms that grow good food, that aren't dependent on questionable farming practices that are tied into science. We need to ask really hard questions about the science that has spun up all these fertilizers and everything, that some of which maybe are good, but some of which have obviously been proven to be poisonous, and to bring a shortened lifespan to the humans who consume the food. These are the issues that we need to tackle going forward. These and so many others. Not continuing to build an economy here in Maine and in America that's based almost exclusively on weapons manufacture for immense profits. Because the way that you make the most money among humans is to make war. That's one of the things the bankers, the banksters, whatever you want to call them, that's one of the things that the economy of the West in the 19th century decided to just collapse into, is the idea that we can become immensely rich and create stability for our own selves if we just make the best weapons the fastest and distribute them globally. It's got to stop. And it is going to stop. It is being stopped by all the forces that are aligning to confront our empire, the American empire. We've earned this confrontation. We've earned in spades this pushback. And someone who I think understands much of what I'm saying is this guy, Nick Fuentes. Like I say, he's growing into his late 20s, and he's all over the place now in the news. Very controversial, and mostly right. His narrative is helpful. You need to pay attention to Nick. Don't just believe. Don't just be lazy and believe liars like Ben Shapiro. So he starts this narrative by calling out Shapiro.
Shapiro's going around publicly and privately saying you have to prevent this from spreading. Tucker's like too big to cancel. So now it creates this big division. And under duress, they're being forced and pressured, make the disavowal, condemn, admonish. Everyone needs to do a better job. And people are saying, no.
America has Israel fatigue, and the Zionists are losing. So in this clip, Nick Fuentes talks about the decline of Zionist control over the American populace. In terms of the propaganda war, they are losing, and their effort to try to cancel Tucker Carlson shows that more than anything. So he gets into how they are clinging desperately to hope that they can manipulate people on the fence to siding with them, despite the fact that Americans have turned against them. So let's watch. Please like the video and subscribe to the channel.
If you don't see this, then it's probably because your mind is still baked into the Schofield Bible narrative about future things, about eschatology. Because the loyalists that Trump is obviously depending upon at this point are these Protestant evangelical I don't like the word Zionist. I'm going to use the word Jewish. These Jewish loyal, not America first, but Jewish loyal, Israel first loyal religious forces in America, that you are being influenced negatively by that force, because this guy's right. Everybody else has moved on. Even your kids have moved on. If you've raised them in the Protestant evangelical Jewish loyal first Judeo-Christian mindset related to religion. If that's your home, if that's what you've come from, if you enjoyed those movies, Left Behind movies, if you read the books, Hal Lindsey, all of that, then you are one of these people. Or if you came up in a family like that, or if you're in a neighborhood that has that sort of a village church in it here in Maine, then this is why you're uncomfortable right now. You are being surrounded. You are surrounded. In the media landscape now, you are surrounded by forces that are not going to continue into the future with those ideas intact, with those eschatological future things, ideas derived from cherry-picking verses in Ezekiel and Isaiah and the Old Testament, and especially Revelation. If those ideas about future things are front and center in your thinking, then you probably don't see reality, even in your little Maine village. You don't see it. You can't see it. You can't fully appreciate what's happening right now. He's right. This commentator is right. Nick Fuentes is right. Tucker is right. Candace is right. Dr. E. Michael Jones, who wrote the book, which is now available in 3 volumes, is right. What you're dealing with is the effect of this Jewish revolutionary spirit in your own religious thinking. In your religious thinking. You're a revolutionary because you're a Judeo-Christian. And if you want to go deeper in understanding the point I'm making, then you need to take time to go and search out E. Michael Jones podcast. There's all kinds of free 1-hour discussions online with him. If you're not going to take time to read his book, to get his book and read it, I get it. It's small print. It's baked into philosophy and history are baked into his argument. So it's not easy pickings. But if you want easy pickings for your brain, then you can for free go online and search up Dr. E. Michael Jones, because he makes himself available, and has for the last 6, 7, 8 years, for an hour at a time to whoever wants to interview him. I've interviewed him. So even little old me with no audience, he gave me time to interview him. This is what you're confronting in your own family, in your own church, in your own neighborhood, is this reality. To use a metaphor that Dr. Jones uses often, the train isn't leaving the station. It's already left. And the only thing you can do now, if you want to get on the train that's moving off into the future with God and with the truth and with humanity's and with peace and humanity in mind, the only thing that you can do now is jump off the station and run to try and catch the caboose and jump into the caboose. Nick and Tucker and Candace, these are all forces. These are all people. These are all teachers. These are all influencers who are on the train as the train is pulling out of the station and going into the future. If you're not with them on the train, you're going to stop growing. You're going to stop moving forward into the future with your kids and your grandkids. You're going to be left behind. on the station. That's just the way history works. It's the way humanity works. That's the way time works in this created universe, and this universe that is created by a good God who's going someplace good. He's not going someplace that's dark and evil. He's going someplace good. That doesn't mean that at the end of time we're not going to have the Antichrist, all these kind of things. No, I mean, yeah, we could. We probably are going to face a period of darkness and difficulty for Christianity. But hey, that's how Christianity got its start. I was listening to a podcast the other day about the century of the 3rd century, 300 to 400 AD, 7,000 documented martyrs, who many of whom, or some of whom, were sainted later by Christianity, by the church. In that one century, Christianity, since the example of its leader, Jesus Christ, has been about suffering. It's been about living into dark times. It's about suffering for picking the babies up off the dump that were being thrown away by the pagans to die, and being persecuted for saving those lives. It's about refusing to bow down to the Caesar or to the idol in order to get food the next day, in order to fit into the social network of the time, the Romans at the time. So you had to bow down. You had to fit into these rules that forced paganism. The Christians wouldn't do it. They didn't do it, and they suffered for it. All the early popes, they were all martyred. I don't know how many of them, but all of them, I think, for those first early centuries. If you signed up to be the public leader of Christianity in those years, you were signing up to be murdered prematurely before you died a natural death. And we in America have come under this prosperity gospel and materialistic and postmodern cultural reality that we live in, to think that God owes us, that we're supposed to die a natural death after a long life, especially if we pray, and if we make Jesus our best buddy, he's our best friend, then no, we're not going to suffer. If you're suffering, it's because you don't pray hard enough. It's because you aren't perfect enough. And this is not Christianity at all. That is not anywhere near what Christianity gives you for strength and grit in the face of diabolical activities. So if you look at Trump and the Epstein and you think, oh my goodness, and this is like, how can our savior, or how can our leader have been, a pedophile? How can he be a pedophile? Hey, look, nothing new under the sun. Read the Old Testament, read the New Testament. All institutions cannot avoid the influence of the fall, cannot avoid the influence of the human element in their governance, in their day-to-day operations. We can't avoid it. It's real. It's there. So Trump's not perfect. Biden's not perfect. Newsom's not perfect. Mamdani, not perfect. But what they are is successful political leaders, meaning they were able to put together coalitions of Americans, sizable enough, even if they were cheating, like Biden did, I think, especially in 2000, whenever it was, January 6, 2000, I guess it was, stole the election from Trump. I mean, this is the world. This is the world. And if you're a Christian, none of this should scare you. And none of this should even surprise you. That's the way things are. That's the way it is. And so be encouraged here. Don't allow the psyops and the social engineering to fill you full of fear, uncertainty, and doubt. FUD, fear, uncertainty, and doubt. Don't go there. So I'm really proud of this young man, because he hasn't allowed fear, uncertainty, and doubt to tamp down the directness and the ferocity of his narrative about the issues that matter the most in terms of the future for our grandchildren and our children. So let's continue watching this. It gets. I watched the first. I don't know how many minutes of this we're going to watch, but I already watched the first 5 minutes or so, and it's definitely worth your time this morning.
I was brought onto the PVD podcast. I guess Ben Shapiro saw it or caught wind of it in advance. He canceled his appearance on Patrick Bet-David, and PVD is saying, well, hey, what gives? He's being punished and big-timed because PBD dared to interview me, even after he interviewed Bibi Netanyahu. This is the state of the conversation. And it's like I said the other night, I don't know that there's too much more to say about this particular interaction. It's all a little bit mind-numbing. But I would say about Megyn Kelly, Matt Walsh, PBD, you guys got to figure out what's going on here. I feel like everybody's surprised. You know, like Shapiro's pressing Megyn Kelly. He's like, why won't you disavow Candace Owens? And Megyn's like, I'm not her boss. And Megyn seems to be like flabbergasted that Shapiro would expect this. Don't you get it, Megyn? Like, seriously, and this is a sincere question. I'm not rhetorical. Don't you get it? Do you not understand that Shapiro is a foreign operative? His job is literally to shut it down. His job is to ostracize anyone that is an obstacle to Israel. And that means me, and anyone who platforms me, like Tucker, and anyone who sounds like me, like Candace.
Yeah, that is his job. That's what he's designed to do, and he'll manipulate people in any direction he can to do it, up to and including lying about what Candace has said about Charlie Kirk's murder, saying that Candace has accused Erica Kirk. No, not whatsoever. Trying to get Megyn Kelly to side with him over his pet project of Israel first. I'm sorry, no. And the ultimate irony here that Nick properly points out is the fact that both PBD and Ben Shapiro, they had on Benjamin Netanyahu, the butcher of Gaza, responsible for over 100,000 deaths and a genocide right now that my criminal country's bankrupt rolling, by the way. They have hosted him, and it's their right to do that, by the way. I'm not trying to clamor to cancel PBD or Ben Shapiro for having the gall to interview someone I think's a total maniacal criminal. But they've done that, and they're saying this guy right here, Nick Fuentes, he's beyond the pale for impure thoughts, for having the wrong opinions on issues that we care deeply about. It's only about Israel. It's about Israel when it comes to Tucker Carlson, too. He hasn't changed any of his opinions or been more or less particularly outspoken about any of them except Israel. That's why they want to destroy him.
And Megyn is sitting there saying, why do you want me to cancel Candace Owens? Because he's trying to suffocate anybody that goes against his real country. And how do you do that? By blacklisting them. If you can't shrink their platform, Candace is hugely popular. I'm popular. Tucker's popular. If you can't take away their platform, you take away their legitimacy. Shapiro knows he can't censor me, and he can't really explicitly call for me to be censored. And same goes for Tucker and Candace. They lost that battle. Tucker, Candace, and me, we're all free. They're free from Fox and Daily Wire. We're all back on the platforms. They're on YouTube. I'm on Rumble. So they can't rug pull us like they could 5 years ago, let's say. So what's the next best thing? Shapiro says, well, I don't want them to be banned, but everyone should blacklist them. Because if you can't take away the megaphone, you can take away the respectability and the legitimacy. Shapiro wants Tucker banned from Turning Point. That's where this is going. Shapiro wants J.D. Vance to disavow Tucker. He wants Vance to fire Tucker's son, I assume. He wants Turning Point to kick out Tucker at their America Fest later this year.
Yeah, well, good luck doing that, because Charlie Kirk's dying words in that text message exchange, the group message exchange, actually, that Candace Owens reveals, says that he wanted Tucker Carlson, and he was doubling down on that despite the ire of the Zionist billionaire donor class that wasn't exactly happy about that. And not only was he doubling down on that, Charlie Kirk's essentially his last words, he said, let's invite Candace Owens too. So good luck. Ben Shapiro's between a rock and a hard place, and I'm glad. I'm here for every moment of it, because he can't just delegitimize and deplatform and undermine people the way that the ruling political class and the legacy media used to do it. Just tarnish them, tell lies about them, say that that person is, dirt and beyond the pale and never to talk to him. No, but he also can't debate Nick Fuentes, because I think he realizes the truth, and that's that Nick would wipe the floor with him. And Nick is far more persuasive, and that's the direction of the American populace in looking at this issue in every single direction. Every poll bears that out, especially younger Americans. So what can he do but resort to this stupid duplicity and manipulation tactics with people that, are friends of people at both sides of this issue on the right? This is not going away. This schism is going to last. The fence sitters cannot just, take a pass on this one, like Megyn Kelly and
This is so true, that this Nick now commands a significant enough group of tech, sophisticated young men that if he continues to lead them away from voting, which he's done, he may have done it this last election cycle. I don't know. I didn't pay close enough attention to know it, but I know he did it. I know that in the run-up to the last Trump election, last November, he was pretty sure, I'm remembering correctly, he was telling his groypers not to vote because of this war that's been ongoing within the Republican Party, led by Trump, against Nick and what he stands for. And what does he stand for? I mean, I go back to when Shapiro showed up on the public scene within so-called conservatism. And one of the things that I learned to do early with all these guys when they started to show up is find out what their position was on sexual orientation. And if they were working to further confuse so-called conservatives and Christians about that issue, then I just turned them off. I didn't pay any attention to them. I've never paid any attention to the Daily Wire or to Ben Shapiro ever, because I had developed the instinct prior to the establishment of these institutions like Turning Point, which was funded by Jews at the very beginning, and of course became a key reason, according to the texts and the evidence, for why Charlie was killed. Circumstantial evidence clearly points to Israel killing him, the Jews killing him, having him killed. So Shapiro never paid any attention to him, Daily Wire, and it was because of the sexual orientation issue. So I'm with this guy in relishing what's happening. For me, this is, in a political sense, like the Judge's passage that we read at the beginning of the show, where Jael takes the tent peg and pounds it through the temple of the commanding, the general of the commanding army there in Judges chapter 4. In a metaphorical sense, in a political sense, that's what's happening right now to Ben Shapiro and Jewish political forces, political and religious forces in the United States of America, to use another metaphor. We used Dr. Jones's earlier about the train leaving the station. The train has left the station, and Shapiro is standing at the station. He's not on the train. Tucker and Nick and Candace are on the train, and it's picking up speed, and it's headed down the tracks. The other analogy for what's going on here in political warfare is JL is found the tent stake, and she's got the point at the temple of the commanding general as he's sleeping in her tent, and she's getting ready to take that hammer and drive it down through his brain. Politically speaking, that's what's happening right now on the Jewish issue, the Jewish question. Call it whatever you want to call it. And that is the issue. It's not race. So I showed a comment by David earlier that he he was kind enough to post here. Maine, despite being the whitest state in America, is institutionally anti-white. Its legislators team up with anti-white DEI peddlers, diversity, equity, and inclusion peddlers, both white and non-white alike. And then he goes on to make this point. On top of Maine already having the nation's second highest number of Somalis per capita, Jezebel Janet Kills has vowed to bring 75,000 more foreign-born migrants to Maine by 2029. So I would argue, and then he concludes, they're all perverted. I would argue that the real issue here is not whiteness or blackness or the color of anybody's skin. I agree about Maine being the whitest, but so what? I mean, it's sort of immaterial. I know it fits into Nick's narrative, and this is a point that I disagree with Nick on, is the point about skin color being a driving force here politically. I don't think it is. I think it's used by both sides to further advance political goals, but I think the real issue here is the moral law. It's morality, and it doesn't have anything to do with skin colors. For example, on the immigration issue, the fact that the Somalis are Muslim or dark-skinned is an accident, to use a philosophical phrase from Aquinas, Thomas Aquinas. It's an accident. The real issue with respect to Somalis coming to Maine is that we need to govern and limit the introduction of foreign cultural and moral, religious identities or forces, groupings in Maine, because it confuses and dilutes who we are as Mainers. Because you bring these folks in who come from halfway around the world, an African culture that is totally foreign to what we think and how we speak and what our laws say and what governs our history. If you go all the way back to the beginning, these are they come filled with habits and a past that makes it very difficult for them to assimilate. And you add to that the fact that the left here in Maine doesn't want them to assimilate. They want to teach them the Somali language, whatever, keep that. They want to keep Muslim Islamic practices alive in the public schools while they squelch and criminalize Christian prayer and Christian beliefs here in Maine. So it's all about this leftist, Marxist, communist idea about the future, which is utopian, out of the conflict that they spin up based on these ethnicities, skin color, religion, whatever it is, sexual orientation, whatever it is. They can create enough conflict. They can build enough cultural conflict, enough economic conflict, that a utopia will emerge naturally, organically. When what actually happens in experience, based on how Marxism has played out and communism in the last century and a half in the West, what actually happens is this is the fastest and most poisonous way to reach a extremely tiny, controlling, power-hungry, retarded, insane, horrific, violent oligarchy or group that you can pursue. This ideology brings that kind of tiny little group at the top into a form of power that becomes overnight bloody and violent against the people, against the common man. This is a fact. It's been tried. And what we're living through right now is the end of the cultural Marxist experiment. So they failed. First of all, they thought they could do it economically, right, with labor unions and conflict between the workers and the owners. And they tried that from about 1840, 50 until the mid 20th century. That didn't work. So in the early 20th century, they pivoted to cultural Marxism. In other words, create divisions, create chaos, get people fighting with one another over all these cultural issues. But that's now dead. That's dead. That's not coming back. The movers and shakers within activism here in Maine are openly and intelligently explaining this and fighting this, which brings me to the point I'd like to make as we move to the end of the show, which concerns a post that was written by my friend Tim Bodnar. Let me spin this up here so we can get the facts. So here it is. All right. Okay. Bear with me. So, okay. So a little bit of Maine politics to put a exclamation point on what we started talking about, which is the driving of the tent peg through the skull of the commander of the opposing army, and the reality of politics being confrontational. And inherent within politics is this this tone and style, this narrative that becomes direct, that confronts the ideas that we've taken for granted that we probably shouldn't have taken for granted. And so using words, sometimes over the top words and actions, politics becomes not just uncomfortable, but sometimes practically unlivable. So this is Tim writing last night, I think, the Truth Slinger on X, writing, "Well, here we go. I am getting pretty tired of elbowing my way into Maine and Maine politics. It hasn't been thankless. It's way worse. I help people. They didn't help me. No, worse. They turned their backs on me when I needed them on multiple occasions. Hard for a man that values loyalty highly. Hard for one that pretty much funded most of his own activism. Yeah, specifically today, I'm talking about Chuck Ellis, Cumberland County Chair. I started that guy and set him up starting his podcast career. Tonight, he has Richard, who I've interviewed more than once, and Nick Blanchard. But when Richard wanted to bring me on the show, Chuck refused and said, sorry, no. What kind of a serious podcaster will not have me on a show with a couple other school board activists? Someone that is mean-spirited and vindictive, and someone that has an agenda that is hidden. I have no other explanation. Chuck is a total coward. He is protecting something from me. Chuck is one of the many GOP frauds that will not platform people they are afraid to face in a discussion. He says I am not to be taken seriously. Oh, but Chuck has a website and is selling coffee. Go buy some of his merch too. He's a real serious voice in Maine and Maine politics. I will tell you something. I don't forget. I will forgive your sin, but I will not forget your back to me. Am I bitter? Yes, today I am. I feel it and I express what I feel. It helps me work it out. Honestly, it's astonishing. I give enough to keep doing this. The activism not really worth it. Maybe I just sit here in the woods every day and watch it all burn and laugh about it. Laugh at it, scoff. It's what I want to do. Problem is I'm me, and I read a Bible and I follow Jesus, so I will do my best not to give in to my sinful nature. Pray for me that I can beat these resentments. I will do my thing, and God help the feckless GOP and the ones actively against me. Should I ever get a serious microphone, I will make sure to tell everyone that will listen who you really are. I think he's referencing Chuck Ellis there. So this is my response. The power and the institutional responsibility of Cumberland County GOP chair, which is what Chuck is in addition to being a podcaster, always leads to this result in Maine politics. Tone and style cop. He becomes the Cumberland County GOP chair becomes the tone and style cop for the GOP. The population of Maine is concentrated in the South, and everyone knows that this region is closest to Boston. It leans hard into the left/progressive vibe or culture, and that is what it is. So here's a picture of Chuck with Richard and Corn Pop Nick Blanchard. Now these are guys who are who are politically like JL in Judges chapter 4. They have the tent peg out, and they've placed it on the temple, the skull of the school board chair in Augusta, Maine, in Nick's case, and in Richard's case, they've got the point of the tent peg up against the temple of the left, the communist left. Richard's very capable of. You should have him come speak to your group or church, because he's one of the most well-informed activists in Maine, political activists on Maine, regarding the details of this particular facet of the left, the Democrats in Maine. You could learn a lot from this man, Richard, at Uninquirer on X. He's got a growing audience on Facebook, doing some of the best work in Maine to protect our traditions and our history and our religion. So, and these guys come under a lot of fire from all different directions, especially Tim, because, and it's always the same. It's always about their personal morality, their personal sins, their personal weaknesses, their personal style when it comes to music or smoking or drinking. It's always these subjects that are used in gossipy ways behind their backs to diminish their power, to diminish their reach. We got to stop doing that, Christians. We got to stop doing that. What you need to say to Nick's face and to Richard's face and to Tim's face is I disagree with you on this point regarding personal morality, and maybe on pot. I don't think you should smoke pot. I don't think we should have pot legal in Maine. Drinking. I don't think you should drink. I don't think you should drink. Say it to them. Tell them what your opinion is, and move on. And let them do their work, and you do your work, and stop gossiping about them. Tell them to their face what your opinion is about these actions on their part with respect to personal morality and habits and even addictions. Doesn't matter. Look, these men are making a bigger difference than almost anybody else who isn't getting paid or isn't becoming powerful as a result of having been elected by one of the two political parties. These three men are doing more than practically anybody else, than practically any other man or woman who haven't sucked up to the power and made it into the legislature and had the door opened for them, and then transitioned successfully to some 501c3 or whatever, some group out that doesn't glorify them by having the door opened every time you enter the chambers. So they shift power, and then they use money to go to a C3, and then they continue their crusade, and the whole time they're gossiping about men like Nick and Tim, especially, because these are really colorful, bold public actors, as is Richard. So I love these guys. I don't agree with them on everything, but I love these guys because of their courage. Their courage sets them apart, and we dare not do anything, say anything to diminish their rising influence and power in Maine at this point, because we need all hands on deck. We need all the help we can get. Chuck Ellis, if someone sends this to you, you need to get Tim on the show, and you need to confront him to his face about issues that concern you. If you can't settle those personal issues outside of the public eye, then settle them in front of the public's eye. But you need to have the guy on. You guys need to talk publicly, for sure. And I hope it happens. So, in fact, consider yourself, Chuck, if you watch this, invited to come on with me anytime on my live stream. I do it at 6 a.m. every morning. You're invited, and anybody if you want to come on, get in touch with me. Send me an email if you're watching this. I would love to talk with you, regardless of your opinion on issues. I'm not saying I'm not giving carte blanche to all million people in Maine to have them on as a guest, but I'll reserve the right to decide. But I think for the most part, if you reach out to me, I'd be happy to have you on and talk with you. So bless the Lord. Hey, what a great start to this Tuesday. So I'll be back tomorrow morning at 6. Remember that you can go to michaelheath.tv anytime you miss the show, and it'll be there, michaelheath.tv. And appreciate you sharing this and liking it, spreading the word. Let's end with the Our Father, in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us